Let's talk to Ben Page, Global CEO at Ipsos, see if he thinks it will make any difference. Ben, very good morning to you.
I think, to be honest, right now they could do literally anything and it wouldn't make any difference.
Yes.
You've got, 8 out of 10 people in this country say it's time for a change. And the numbers are just staggering. I mean, the record that we're looking at that is likely to be broken on Thursday is that normally in this country, either Labour or the Conservative Party can be guaranteed 30% of the vote. And that's what John Major achieved in the wipeout in 1997. This time, we're seeing the Conservatives on around 20%, 21, 19, depending on your poll, of the vote. So it's a massive, massive shift. And that means in our first past the post system, that Labour is almost certain to win. And the only question really is just how vast their majority is likely to be.
Yes, because months before the election was actually announced, it seemed to me that whenever there was a poll done that showed Labour very, very far ahead of the Tories, still there was a kind of a warning, wasn't there? There was a kind of a caveat that suggested that there still has to be quite a big swing to Labour for them to actually get a big majority. All of those conversations seem to have disappeared now.
Well, yes, and what you're seeing in the polls is that they've all stayed at pretty much the same place when the campaign began. If anything, the Conservatives have gone down slightly. Labour have a tiny bit as well, but the Conservatives more because of the entry of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party, which of course has taken votes on the right. But no, I was personally expecting something like 1997 to happen, where if you look at the detail, you can see that John Major's personal ratings, as he went around the country, for those of you old enough to remember, on a soapbox, literally, and his personal ratings gradually improved during the campaign. This time, that has not happened.
And do you think this is some kind of a shift permanently then, away from the two-party system that we've known for certainly as long as I've been alive?
Well, we've talked about, pundits and pollsters and journalists talk about that. I think what it shows is that people's attachment to the two main parties is fragile. It's possible that Keir Starmer is going to get a huge majority and still may be deeply unpopular within a couple of years. We have more people than ever in Ipsos's polling who spontaneously say, when we ask them what the problem is facing the country, just all the politicians, not Labour, not the Conservatives, just all the politicians. And so you are seeing that. And it's certainly true that if we were France, who are having elections at the moment, it's likely that you would have seen both the big parties have split into probably two parties each, left and right on both sides, because because of, if you had PR, you would then, you would see Reform, for example, who might get 15% of the vote tomorrow. They would get a lot more than just 3 MPs, which is what our model a few weeks ago was predicting.
Right.
So you would see a much more complex picture. But the first past the post system is the defence of the two big parties. It's very hard for third parties to get into this system. I don't think it's the end of them. Remember, back in 2017, they got 82% of the vote. But, it's certainly a sign that people are fed up with politics in general.
Yes. I mean, interestingly, the Survation poll came out late last night, has got Reform, I think, getting something like 7 seats, which may be slightly more up-to-date, perhaps, than yours. But equally, I was going to ask you what you make of these MRP polls, because a lot of people are slightly, sort of, shall we say, suspicious. I saw Peter Mandelson the other day saying you shouldn't pay any attention to these MRP polls. They're not really polls. They're projections. They're kind of models. They're not necessarily a true, an accurate representation of how people are actually going to vote.
Well, no, I mean, because, of course, what you're doing is generalising from quite large samples. I mean, Ipsos has done one along with several of the other companies this year, and you're generalising from still a large sample, but you don't have detail for every constituency. And, of course, you're then making estimates about what will happen in individual constituencies. So they're great fun, which is why the industry does them. But, yes, the poll I would be personally looking at, wait for 10 o'clock tomorrow night. The exit poll is real voters outside real polling stations, and where we're watching, the Ipsos is looking for the amount of change that has taken place at that polling station since the last time.
Right.
The final polls will be published, are coming out now today, and our final poll will be in the Evening Standard tomorrow. And those, of course, last time in 2019 were accurate to 0.6% on average for each party. So, yes, the MRPs is an interesting thing. It gives you some more detail, but I think I have some sympathy with Peter Mandelson, who's saying just look at the polls, the final polls. So we'll see. But if nothing changes, they will all show a very, very convincing majority for Labour.
Yes, and what have you got for the Tories? Something like 60 or 70 seats?
Oh, I'm not personally. I would say 100 plus. But to be honest, in our own MRP model, there were 100 constituencies where you could flip a coin, and it's that close.
Right.
But either way, the only question now is really the size of the Labour majority. There's still an issue about turnout. We've seen fewer people than pretty much ever saying in recent decades saying that they're certain to vote tomorrow. Among the young people, who of course are the most enthusiastic Labour voters, it's only 37% who say they're absolutely certain to vote tomorrow. So you could see a result like 2001, where fewer than 6 out of 10 registered voters actually turned up, partly because they believed it was the result was a certainty.
Right.
And we've got 36% who said they could change their mind, which of course some Conservatives, including Boris Johnson, see as a sign that maybe at the last minute there will be a sort of penalty shootout and the Conservatives won't lose quite so badly. But I think at the moment a Labour majority, whatever happens.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much indeed. Ben Paisley, Global CEO from Ipsos.